Hi, guys. Welcome back from break. Today, we're going to talk about review the information we learned about the United Kingdom, just to refresh your memory about what you've learned. All right. Let's not forget the four themes, the three things we're going to learn about today: human systems, how do people interact; environment and resources, what is the land like; region and places, which will use general facts about the country itself. Names. United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland contains England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. That's everything in the country. Great Britain is the big island that we've talked about. That is where Scotland, Wales, and England are on. Northern Ireland is obviously on the island of Ireland. England is just England. The British Commonwealth are countries that used to be part of the empire. Some people recognize the Elizabeth II as the monarch and the head of state. Some do not, but they all rule themselves. England is technically made up of multiple countries, or the United Kingdom is technically made up of multiple countries. However, hundreds of years ago, what used to be the Kingdom of England conquered those countries and changed their name accordingly each time. Should be a pretty easy question for you guys. Religion. Okay. So the official religion is Christianity, specifically the Church of England. There are many different denominations of Christianity, many different religions, including Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism, Judaism, and Buddhism. There is religious freedom in the country, but the official religion is Christianity. And what happened is you have a lot of immigration from other countries. Those people brought their cultures, they brought their language, they brought their religions. And because of that, England became a much more diverse country. Languages, even though they brought their language, the language of the country itself is still English, as the language you use in most places you go, almost every place you go. However, there are other native languages, such as Welsh, Gaelic, Irish, and Cornish. And then you also have Scots and Ulster Scots, which is sort of a mix between some of those older languages and English. So it can be difficult to understand for some, even native speakers of English, but it is predominantly English. The culture of the United Kingdom, as I said, is very diverse. All those countries that we talked about all have their own unique traditions and customs. There are some things that unify them, but they are very different. And also the British Empire, because they conquered so many countries, and I showed you the map of countries that England has invaded, that they invaded almost every country on earth. There's probably 15 countries England didn't invade at least once. But after they created the British Empire and after it started to fall, many of those people from those countries ended up immigrating to the United Kingdom. So you have people from the Afro-Caribbean nations, from Asia, from Africa, and the Middle East, Australia, places like that. So they've all brought their cultures with them and changed it. And because of that, England has had sort of a strong cultural influence on the rest of the world. Even today, a lot of you know music, or in terms of like One Direction is a very popular band. Movies and TV shows, Harry Potter was very, very popular. All those came from England. Ethnic groups, the predominant ethnic group in the United States are white people. However, you can break that down into specific ethnic groups. You have the English or the British, you have Scottish, Irish, Welsh, Gypsy, Traveler, they're sort of the Romani people. They sort of move around a lot, and they're their own specific ethnic group. People from Asian ethnic groups are about 7.5%. That's mostly from places like Pakistan and India, though there are other people from places like the Middle East or Hong Kong, Southeast Asia. So it's a very diverse population, but the biggest groups are from India and Pakistan. Black ethnic groups, as I said before, that's a mix Afro-Caribbean, so people from Jamaica, or then other Black Africans from places like Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, places like that. And because of the immigration sort of started more recently in the last 50 years or so. So the younger somebody is, the more likely they are not considered, or they are not white. Economy. Biggest thing you got to know about the British economy is that it's a fairly wealthy country that does a lot of trade, has oil, natural gas in the North Sea, and has a lot of tourism. People want to go and see the museums, the culture, things like that. Settlement patterns. England is a very urbanized country, or in the United Kingdom in general, though England is the most urbanized. Most people who live in the United Kingdom live in towns or cities. A town would be something like Myrtle Beach. A city would be something more like Atlanta. People are living longer, they have fewer children. This is why they depend on the immigration from all these other countries. As we talked about before, in developing countries, people tend to have a lot more children because it gives you more opportunities. But in developed countries, people tend to have less children because it's very expensive to raise children if you want to go out to eat or go to the movies or go on trips. That if you have 5 kids going on a vacation can cost a huge amount of money versus having 1 kid, it's significantly less. Big thing you need to know about the environment and resources, the climate of the United Kingdom is that it is fairly mild climate. It doesn't get too cold, it doesn't get too hot. Usually, don't get me wrong, it's sometimes very hot, sometimes very cold, but usually it's fairly mild. But it does rain a lot, with the exception of London and the southeast down here. Most of the country, it rains pretty frequently, as you can see, with the most rainfall would be about 180 inches, which is almost 4 times the amount we get in Myrtle Beach, which, as you know, Myrtle Beach is not exactly a dry place. Terrain, because of the rain, you can see it's very green and all these. It's a very hilly area caused by the last ice age, but it is very green. But I mean, in general, there's not a lot of natural disasters there. So that's one benefit, maybe flooding. Environmental issues, as I just said, they don't really have many natural environmental issues. It's actually kind of, in terms of like what the US deals with or what other countries deal with, is actually quite nice naturally, though they do have the environmental issues that many developing countries have: litter, waste, soil contamination. Developed countries have air pollution, climate change, all these things affected by people using cars, using electricity, using all the things that people view as benefits in developed countries. Government. United Kingdom has a unitary parliamentary democracy. Unitary meaning one government. The United States has many governments. Each state has its own government that's separate from the national government. The United Kingdom, it's unitary, meaning there's one government. It's parliamentary, meaning they don't elect their prime minister. The prime minister is the leader of whatever party wins the election. So as opposed to voting for the president like they do in the United States, they vote in their local election, and then whoever wins the most local elections, that party decides who the prime minister is. Queen Elizabeth II is considered the head of state, but she has very little power compared to Boris Johnson, who's the prime minister, and his cabinet, or basically his supporters. They run the different ministries, so education, transportation, etc. The legislative branch, or the lawmaking branch, is divided into 2 houses, by meaning 2. Right, the House of Commons, which is the one that makes almost every law, and then the House of Lords, which used to have a lot more power, but today doesn't have much. The Constitution is not a written document. It can be changed a lot easier than it can in the United States. In the United States, in order to change the Constitution, you essentially need a miracle. because it is very, very difficult. It's meant to be very, very difficult. You essentially have to get almost everybody in the United States to agree. That is not the case in the United Kingdom. Also, don't forget that the governments of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland all have their own parliaments. They all have their own governments. They are united in the money they use, in the military, in a lot of things, but they have separate governments themselves. And last but not least, the continent is Europe, capital is London, and the population is about 6 million people.